Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, we are starting a brand new year, of course, a brand new month. And with that comes a lot of different things that people mark. One of those is dry January and our relationship with alcohol. And those relationships are very different for everybody. They have worked with a lot of people in many different aspects, from addiction to life coaching, all different areas. And they're back with us today. It's Scott Spiers and Julie Robertson from Kintsugilifecoaches. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. It's so ironic in a way when, we just got finished with a New Year celebration, which for many or some includes alcohol. And then we go right into dry alcohol, dry January. Maybe there's a reason for that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think there's one of them is people having a hangover on New Year's Day. No, seriously. It's like, that's it. I'm not going to drink again. And the whole dry January thing actually started in Great Britain around 2013. We've been trying to, but society's been trying to control alcohol since like prohibition. It's a little bit before our time, but it just doesn't work. And then the messages about, how dangerous it is to drink, it just doesn't work. So they came up with a way to get people to explore what their lives can be like if they don't drink for a month. And it's been hugely successful. I mean, we've all heard of it. And now it's become an entire phenomenon year round, where people are actually challenging their relationship and changing their relationship with alcohol.
It's kind of ironic that you said what you just said a second ago, because I celebrated New Year's at a bar called Prohibition.
Oh, that's funny.
Can't make that up. Literally had 2 beers for the entire night. That was good. And I was here first thing on New Year's Day, reorganizing and just setting up my office and doing all that. But you hear so many different things. Of course, the benefits of not having alcohol. I mean, the list goes on and on. But then on the flip side of that, you hear the benefits of alcohol. A drink a day is actually really good. What's the last thing you heard about that? Where are we at with that?
So to try to make something really complicated, even more complicated, I think we've heard that a beer is decent for the kidneys and a glass of wine is decent for the circulation in the heart. But what we're learning is, like in the case of the beer, sure, it's okay for the kidneys, but for everything else, not so much. And the same thing with wine, there are some cognitive benefits and some vascular benefits. But again, when you're taxing the liver and all the other systems, it's one of those things where, It's like, for some people, milk isn't a good thing. They're lactose intolerant. So too much of anything isn't good. But we're learning that there is no safe amount of alcohol. But the point isn't to scare people.
No, I totally understand.
Work.
But you know what? It where I went with that was the conflicting messages that you hear. And you guys, once again, like there's all different research, this being good, that not being good, probably in the end, dare I say this, not to have a drink. Maybe you want one on the weekend, whatever it might be, as opposed to the, glass of wine a day is good for you. And that was about, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, I first heard that, that was beneficial in terms of vascular. But there's so many other benefits to not drinking alcohol that we don't think about.
The other one, running is good for us, right? It helps our heart and all that, but running's not so good for your knees.
Right.
So we still want to engage in these things. Of course we do. I mean, the idea of people stopping entirely. So what I love about the dry January thing and the whole relationship to alcohol is people are saying, remember the old commercials, try it, you'll like it. So it's a chance to try and have some support. There's a good amount of cultural stuff behind it. And people can, the way they always do anyway, is make their own decision. Is alcohol something I want in my life? And how much alcohol do I want? It's amazingly effective. It's better than public policy. I think It's been
Mm.
probably the most successful campaign since the whole thing about the Surgeon General and cigarettes.
I think what's interesting about it too is a lot of times people are starting on their health journey in January, right? And so sometimes it's just an added challenge to eating clean. I'm going to eat clean and I'm not going to drink for the month, right? Because it's a lot around just making some behavior changes and trying to be healthier overall. But again, it's, after 30 days, some people go back to what they were doing before and or change it slightly because of how they felt after that 30 days.
When we talk about alcohol, and we'll get into some of the benefits of dry January or some of the challenges, when somebody's addicted to alcohol and they just want to become sober, what are some of the things that go on psychologically? How does it chemically work? I know, Scott, you've got a lot of experience, in coaching people too.
It's one of those things, it's different for different people. Like, there are some people that have an incredible physical tolerance to alcohol to the point that they can't live without it and they need to drink every day. So I think for most of our listeners and most of us in the room, as soon as we hear the term alcoholic, that's what we're thinking of. The person in the gutter, the person that's lost everything. So they're the easiest one to visualize, right?
Right.
But the real hidden danger with alcoholism are the so-called functioning alcoholics, the people that are drinking 3-4 martinis during lunch, going to another party at the end of work, and consuming alcohol. When I worked on base at the headquarters of Marine Corps Quantico, they had a separate room for the generals and the colonels, because by the time they got to the rehab center, they usually had to be life flighted to I was in Quantico, so they'd have to go down to Wilmington or to a trauma center because they were successful. They never lost work or anything, but their body was so addicted to the alcohol. And for those people, you never know they're alcoholic until they stop drinking. And that's when the stuff hits the fan. So they always maintain a certain level. Then the other people, they simply can't stop. Like, they only drink once a month, once a week, but once they start, they're going to drink an entire 12 pack. They'll drink an entire pint or a fifth. And the really extreme examples go for a whole handle, which is like 2 fifths. So there's also people that are self-medicating. They feel anxious, they feel alone, so they drink the alcohol. Now they feel connected, they feel good. And so there are a whole bunch of different types of people with alcohol issues. But some of them, it's very dangerous to stop drinking right away. Others, something like dry January, that's all they need. They have maybe a couple headaches, maybe they don't feel so well, and then they're fine.
Let's talk about why it would be dangerous.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research for this, and the first thing that popped up was from a medical journal that there's a small percentage. Again, I don't like scaring people, but there are some people that might experience very serious withdrawal symptoms. And the ones where, if anybody out there is experiencing these things, call 911, get to your doctor, get an ambulance. If you're having hallucinations, if you're seeing or hearing things that aren't there, and it's reasonable to think it's since you quit drinking, that's a big one. The other one is insomnia, not sleep disturbance, but you can't sleep for 3 days. That's actually a very serious withdrawal symptom.
Wow.
And I think the one people have heard of is delirium tremens, which is a combination of intense shaking, seizures, hallucination. I'd say a fever above a 101. If you have any of those symptoms, get medical help right away.
Now, for the people that could be experiencing any of those symptoms when going dry, typically, everybody's different, but typically, who are those people? How much do you think they're consuming?
I love that question. I was just talking about this with my group last night, which coincidentally are 90% alcohol related. Again, it's different for different people.
Sure.
So ask me something just a hair more specific so I don't have to
Okay. So I'm just trying to get the picture of somebody that could potentially have insomnia, hallucinations, all of that. what would they typically be consuming in terms of
Okay,
amount?
thank you. One of the questions we had last night was, how do you know if you're the type of person that can never drink again? And my answer, this is from experience, and from a lot of reading. If you're a male, roughly 165 pounds, if you can drink and tolerate a 12 pack of beer every single night, you have an extraordinarily high tolerance of that would be well above a 0.20. So if you can tolerate that much alcohol, your cells have literally adapted to the presence of the alcohol.
Wow.
So because if Julie doesn't drink, if she drank 4 glasses of wine right now, what would happen?
Yeah, I'd be tipsy.
Would you get sick?
I probably would get a headache, a hangover for the next day. I don't think I'd vomit tonight, but I would not be able to
5?
drive.
5?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're getting sick.
So all humans are naturally opposed to alcohol. Your body doesn't like it. It's literally a poison. So if a person can drink maybe 4 or 5 drinks and they're fine, they don't get sick, it means their cells have adapted to it. For a usual person to drink to a 0.10 or a 0.12, it's really unpleasant because they throw up, they feel horrible, they have the horrible hangover.
Yeah.
So if you can tolerate those high amounts, there's a really good chance you probably shouldn't be drinking at all, and you should probably get medical help.
Wow. And I have a friend, he used to drink a lot. He had stomach issues and a lot of issues, and he's since cut back. But he would be that guy where we go out and I'm just, a couple of beers watching a game, and you would not even know. Like, and I would say to everybody, you don't even know that he's drinking anything. Maybe he's a little more jovial, but and he's a great guy. There's never any issues whatsoever. But he did realize that, yes, I need to pull back on that. And it's funny, I hadn't seen him in a little while, and we got together for dinner not even a month ago, and he says, yeah, it's been since the last time you saw me, since I had a drink. I'm like, really? You? And it was like 3 or 4 months, and he totally cut back and kind of cleaned up a little bit. And sometimes it takes some health issues to realize that you're overdoing it.
Yeah. I've got another client that I'm working with, had pancreatitis and cirrhosis of the liver and heart problems, and went without alcohol for 3 days in a rehab facility and had seizures at the rehab facility. So that level of drinking, very, very, very dangerous.
My gosh. Yeah. But it just illustrates what some people can tolerate.
Right.
And the flip side of that, I don't think most people realize that your body can be adapted to it. Like it's like it's blood, like it's expecting it to be in your system.
Yeah.
And in the really extreme cases, the body actually gets its nutrition from the alcohol. So again, in the really dramatic cases, they can eat whatever, but the body isn't going to absorb the nutrients. It's only with the alcohol. And then again, that's less than 1%. That's
Right.
extremely stage. But if you're able to put down the 12 pack, there was a point in time where that individual could also just put that down a 12 pack. So at that point, I think you really want to challenge your relationship with alcohol. Wherever you're living, contact probably an inpatient facility or a substance abuse counselor and probably get some help. But again, the vast majority of people aren't going to get to that level because the body simply can't take it.
It is amazing how some people, and I've spoken with them, that they can hide it, or they're in recovery. That's how it's put. They're in recovery, could be even for 10 years, but they hid it for years, even from their kids. Nobody ever knew that they were hitting the bottle all the time.
Oh yeah, and some of the people I work with are housewives. They're honestly doctors, law enforcement, nurses, etc. They get very, very good at hiding it. So you would never know. You would absolutely never know, even their loved ones, because they had a bottle hidden in the bathroom or a bottle hidden at other places. They can get quite skillful. And again, you would never know they had a problem until they stopped drinking. then they're irritable, they're probably shaking, they're probably sweating a little bit. So they do their best to make sure they always have alcohol.
So people choose alcohol to cope, whatever that reason is. If they were to pick a other substance, whatever that might be, which would mirror what they're getting from alcohol, or there isn't one.
The closest that would mirror it would be benzodiazepines. But you're bringing up a great topic that might actually get some questions from the audience. There's I think her name was Demi Lovato.
I mean, Lovato, sure. Yeah.
She came out with California Sober, which she doesn't drink alcohol anymore, but she only eats edibles and smokes weed. So there is a movement that I don't endorse it, but I do understand it, that are substituting alcohol with weed because, in theory, marijuana is less dangerous than the alcohol. And sure, very few people get like extremely sick, but as we're starting to see, some people do develop. They start vomiting uncontrollably once they've had too much of THC levels, and a lot of people are starting to show psychotic symptoms. So marijuana is not entirely harmless in all things moderation.
What about food? I feel like a lot of people might replace alcohol with food.
So
So what about that? Like, does that replace it?
yeah, I think it does. So food makes you feel good. You also get that dopamine reward, though dopamine's not the only one. Interestingly, you and I talked, it was about 3 weeks ago, about nutrition and its effect on depression and mental health. And there was an article that just came out like 2, 3 days ago on research into the relationship between food and mental health, and how our digestive system is tied to, like, our biome is tied to our brain. So we're at the beginning of a new frontier, and that's why I love things like Sober January or Dry January, because people get to experience it, learn a little bit without having it shoved down their throats.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing. Have a detox, digital detox weekend. Put your devices away, see if you could live with it. And then if you can, then, hey, things are okay. You see that you can. We do have instant feedback from Kelly in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Instant feedback, steve@gmail.com. And she says, thank you for your talk today. Can you tell me, is marijuana addictive?
If marijuana can be addictive, and if you don't mind me getting personal,
Go right ahead.
I am one of those people that marijuana destroyed my life. The percentage is very small. There is such a thing as marijuana withdrawal. So the way to think about it, whatever the intoxicating effect, the part that gets you high, the withdrawal is the opposite. So marijuana withdrawal typically is going to be loss of appetite, irritability, sleep disturbance. So if you stop smoking weed and all of a sudden you can't eat, that's actually a physical withdrawal symptom. But let's get real. Alcohol is a hornet's nest, right? If you're going through alcohol withdrawal, you know it. I like to equate marijuana withdrawal to a mosquito, that it's buzzing around and it's not going to kill you, but it will drive you crazy.
It'll annoy you. It'll annoy you. You'll just be like, where you're getting stung, on the alcohol side of things.
And anybody that uses weed, I mean, even Snoop Dogg calls it the chronic, because it's one of those things you want to use all the time. And you can build up a tolerance. And any of the stoners out there know this, that after a month of solid smoking, they need more and more to get the same high. So that's at the point where they're most likely to feel the withdrawal.
I have a friend, long time. We grew up together. He has since moved away to another state years ago. But he used to smoke all the time, functioned perfectly, had a government job at some point. He's got all sorts of, and I'm not saying anything negative about marijuana. I'm just pointing this out. Major health issues, even with his eyes, like glaucoma. And I don't know if there's a connection to it, but he was a heavy user and has been and has not stopped since. It just makes me wonder, as his friend, if there's something there. I don't know.
Oh yeah. So what we're going to see with marijuana, like they use marijuana for glaucoma patients. I remember 20
Yes.
years ago. Well, what it does, it dilates your vessels in your capillaries. It increases your blood pressure. So you just take into mind, if you're increasing your blood pressure chronically, that eventually is going to have an effect. And again, not trying to scare people. I
No,
don't
no.
know what level it is, but whenever you do something, there's going to be a side effect to it. So marijuana, again, not as horrible as alcohol, but it is real there. And what I like to tell people, it's not half as bad as the people who hate it think it is, but it's not half as good as the advocates think it is. So, and we're learning so much. And what I love about our culture now is we have conversations like this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's becoming acceptable to talk about this stuff without demonizing it. And
Well,
I think that's the important thing.
and so many states are now passing it, right? So it's more of a legal
Yeah.
use, right, in certain situations. And so I think we're learning so much because there are more people who are allowed to use it. We're allowed to research those people, right, to see their health benefits or
Yeah.
negative outcomes that might be associated with those things.
Sure.
So it actually helps us as a culture
Right.
whenever we can kind of test and learn, right? Science, and learn more about these things.
And I do wish the federal government would legalize it in other states, because we can debate whether or not marijuana is good or bad. But man, you put somebody in jail for a while, you put a felony or a misdemeanor on their record, you take them away from their families and their income, that definitely causes harm. And I think it's a case where the punishment didn't fit the crime, and it actually is more damaging to people long run, which is why I've always been an advocate for legalization. And just because I can't smoke it doesn't mean nobody else can.
Well, look
But
at who that's coming from. So you can speak that way.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned
Yeah.
the word harm, Scott. We have another question here from Janine. She says, in regards to marijuana, how do you feel about harm reduction counseling?
I'm a harm reductionist. I practice harm reduction almost exclusively in my private practice. And again, I cannot be a counselor for anybody outside of the state of North Carolina, but I have done a little bit of coaching outside of it. There's a gray area there. I'm a strong advocate of harm reduction. Here's an example of harm reduction. Hopefully, you're comfortable with this. Hey, instead of smoking it, go to edibles, because you're not damaging the lung. The problem with edibles, though, and I had a DWI just last month. They ate edibles. They felt no effect from the edible. They're driving down the road a half hour later. Ooh, then they felt the effect of the edible and hit a tree.
Mm.
So edibles, you've got to be careful. It takes up to 2 hours to feel effect. Now, obviously, I'd rather nobody needed to eat an edible, but edibles are objectively less harmful than smoking it. So,
And vape, and then we have vaping. So that's a whole other category.
and I used to advocate vaping, but there are so many. I love the music, but you don't want to breathe heavy metals. So it's always a matter of what is the source. Get the safest source that you can from a reputable outfit. Just whenever you're doing anything, be safe.
And you never know where you're getting it from. That's the other challenge.
I
It
know.
could be laced with, you don't even know. We're just about out of time, but I want to pivot, not drinking alcohol, but drinking water right now. And we had this conversation maybe 3 weeks ago about hydration and people who are hydrated. And remember, you had said, Scott, something to the effect that people with mental health issues would have a lot less challenges or side effects if they hydrated properly. I think it was like 60 or 90% or something like that. So I just saw this today, and I thought of you and what we had talked about in terms of why hydration is so important. This is fresh stuff. A new study found middle-aged people are 20% more likely to die early if they're chronically dehydrated. And while you're alive, it also makes you 50% more likely to look old if you're chronically dehydrated. I don't know
Yeah.
what the term for chronically dehydrated is, but I do know that we all don't drink enough water. It's totally true.
Because I mean, if you think about it, your cells need the water, right? Your cells are made up of water and of a lot of water, right? So as you drink less and less, right, your cells are shrinking and so that can make more wrinkles be more pronounced. It can,
Sure.
cause you
Right.
to not feel good, be cloudy judgment or thinking, so there's a lot of benefits to being well hydrated.
And if your body's under stress, you're naturally anxious. And if you're always naturally anxious, you end up getting depressed. So there is a correlation. I'm not saying that it's causal, but it is a little bit of common sense. And I tell you what, here's my challenge to everybody out there. Hydrate yourself for a month. See how you feel. Let's have a wet January.
Yeah, wet January.
Let's do wet February.
Not alcohol, though, with water.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, great talking to you. What's your website? If somebody wants to reach out, has any questions about even substance abuse, I know, you can practice in only certain states, North Carolina, but certainly on the life coaching end, this is all about life and moving your life forward. So how do we find you guys?
Yeah, you can find us at kcoaches.com or Kintsugi Life Coaches on Facebook and Instagram.
And we'd like to announce coming soon. So get onto our website, get our mailing list. Very soon, we will be Kintsugi Life Coaches channel on YouTube so that we can take people's questions directly. We love what you do. We've had so much fun that we are going to jump into the podcast bin.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hey, congratulations, guys. And, loosely I say cheers, if I can. Always great. Yeah, always great having you here. And I wish you all the best. And here's to a great 23 for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.